If French bashing were an Olympic sport, the British would be gold medalists every 4 years. But who needs them? We, the French, excel at bashing our own country, especially when it comes to discussing the terrible state of the French travel industry right now. The culprit? The 2024 Paris Olympics, taking place from July 2026 to August 11. Add to that the terrible weather in spring and early summer, plus some political turmoil you may have heard of recently. French tourism professionals feel terrible about the situation. And yet, 2 weeks ago, Airbnb published an article saying that nights booked for Olympics were up by 400% compared to the previous year in the Paris region. So what's happening? Why are people on the ground saying it's really, really bad? And why is Airbnb so rosy about the situation? Well, welcome to the Vacation Rental podcast. I'm Thibault Masson, and today we're diving deep into the challenges facing the vacation rental managers and hospitality professionals in France as we approach the 2024 Olympic Games. Despite the excitement around the event, May and June have been unexpectedly tough months, and July and August look to be very underwhelming. Well, France does not need the Olympics to draw in crowds. Last year, 2023, was a record year for tourism in Paris and France, attracting more than 100 million visitors. In fact, the opposite is happening. Disruptions due to roadworks, fears of congestion, terrorism threats, rising accommodation prices, and political drama have kept people away this spring and will also during the Olympics. So, we'll explore several detailed reasons why occupancy rates are down, such as the oversupply of rental listings, the displacements of regular tourist activities due to Olympic events, and the avoidance of the city by international travelers. Then we'll try to reconcile this with some surprising data from Airbnb about the upcoming Olympics. Let's get started. So let's talk about what makes this Olympics special. First, for industry. First, Airbnb bet a lot on these Olympics. To be clear, Airbnb is one of the biggest sponsors of the event, of the Olympics here and the Paralympics there. They've been a partner of the Olympics since Tokyo, which was, due to COVID, which is not the best year to do so. And now they're doing this again. And what they really did, they really been campaigning for a year to get more supply, to really get people to start listing. And their data shows that there's 40% more listings, 40 more percent listings in the Paris region than last year. And that was just the data from the first quarter of 2024. I looked at data with Price Labs, and you could clearly see that in some key area, like around the Grand Stade, the big stadium around near Paris, the number of listings actually been multiplied by 5 over 2 years. So what's special as well about the Olympics is that they're not just in Paris, right? If I show you here a map, that's a map of central Paris, which you may know is very, very small, much smaller than London. And here are all the different places where events will be taking place, from the Eiffel Tower to the Hotel de Ville, all these places. Because one of the bets was to use existing places and famous backdrops as a place where events will be taking place, which basically means that it's right instead of Paris. So you can imagine why it's so chaotic to be in Paris at the moment. Roadblocks. It's actually very hard in some areas to cross one side to the other of the river because it's just for security reasons. It's also taking place around Paris. So it's outside of Paris, of course, talk about the big stadium, but even the Versailles Palace will see some horse events, equestrian events happening. But it's not just that, it's actually even in other cities throughout France. In Lille, in Bordeaux, Marseille, Lyon, you have from football, basketball match. Even in Polynesia, in French Polynesia, in Tahiti, you can get surfing. So that was one of the things. It's taking place all over the country. So the impact is felt, for good or bad, across the country. One of the other things to mention is that the So what's good about it, for example, is that Dutch and Australian guests who are among the top of the middle table for field hockey booked the most nights to the Colombes area outside of Paris, where the sport will be played. One of the top destinations for Spaniards and Brazilians is Bordeaux, where the national football teams play two matches. And one of the top destinations for Chinese guests is Vanves, around Paris, near the venue for table tennis, a sport which the Chinese have long dominated. So in a way, it's was a great plan. It's kind of working, and this is trends from Airbnb, who's just telling us that it's spreading out people around the country, and yet things are not going so well. May and June have seen a significant drop in both tourism and revenue for many in the hospitality industry in France. Here are some key points based on recent reports. First, let's talk about event displacements. Regular visitors have been avoiding France in 2024 due to anticipated construction works in spring and summer 24, leading and later fears of overcrowding, congestion from the influx of Olympic attendees, leading to a less enjoyable experience. Many popular tourist sites will be inaccessible. Remember, they're backdrops to events, further deterring regular tourists seeking a more relaxed visit. For example, you can't go on the Eiffel Tower. According to Paris hotel data, revenue per available room RevPAR dropped by 25% from June 2024 compared to last year. Occupancy fell by 11 points, and average prices decreased by 14%. Um, Add to that transportation issues. Traffic congestion and blocked roads are major problems. Tourists and locals alike are discouraged from visiting central Paris. Central Paris is relatively small compared to London, and the city plans to use its most iconic areas as backdrops for competitions. Adding to this, the threat of terrorism means that movement within the city will be severely restricted, with some bridges closed to traffic for weeks. Let's add some political uncertainty to the mix following the recent snap elections. It's been a deterrent for some tourists, let's say, further impacting the overall travel sentiment towards Paris. And let's talk about the weather. Poor weather this summer has further damped tourism, particularly for outdoor activities. Has been a significant issue for cruise operators and other outdoor attractions. So it means spring has been bad, early summer has been bad, and we know the Olympics don't look good. Add to this business travel, which is of course very big. Paris is a big convention city. A lot of conferences have avoided Paris this spring, and of course, this summer usually it's not that many, but this spring definitely they did because again of logistical challenges posed by the games. That's further impacted hotel occupancy and revenue, and a bit on the short-term rental side. So it's definitely been a challenge. But this is where it gets interesting, right? Airbnb says that they actually have positive trends. They said that the nights booked in the Paris region during Olympic Games are over 5 times higher than the same time last year. It suggests a strong demand for short-term rentals for the event. Also, what they said, as I explained earlier, that is spreading out outside of Paris, right, where the events are taking place as well. So they do see dispersal of demand across some region. And as I said as well, they say also that supply has increased by 40%. So how can we explain that? We can explain this in different ways. So what we saw, well, we was looking at data with price labs. We saw really early on that people who were coming from abroad, probably a lot of Americans, for example, booked early on long stays. Typically, you could see a change in demand looking at graphs in with Price Lab. You could see people was booking 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks stays, street stays in the Paris region, even in some places outside of Paris, which were, these kind of bookings were not happening before, and this happened early on, which is fantastic. And obviously, what we saw as well, there was like a lot of people listing their place for the first time, for example, and dreaming of making big and having like incredible hopes at 10 times what the market price should be. And you could see that would be too high, it would be crashing. And actually, something you see usually around big events. Big events, quite often, like a Super Bowl or even the London Olympics, some people end up being very disappointed because demand is always different. And in cities like Paris and London, again, you don't need a big event like this to draw in crowds. It will actually keep people away. But how can Airbnb have more searches and bookings than usual? That's kind of what I said, is that in the end, for short-term rental, which are interesting, it's not as much of a disaster as hotels, in the sense that groups looking for places will have preferred short-term rentals. And yet, what I'm hearing from people on the ground, it's not going really well. Prices in the end will only be increased by 1.5, not by 10x. Number one. Number two, prices right now are crashing down. So people were just too high. And number three as well, because some people, some Parisians, for example, have second homes and usually they rent them out during the summer. But this summer, they're traveling to their second home because they don't want to be in Paris and they stay there the whole summer. So it means people who are vacation rental managers in this seaside, for example, they can't rent this house to other guests. So even in these other areas where there's no Olympics, vacation rental managers are hit because people are just not staying at their. People can't book with them because the owners are occupying the places. So you can see how there's a whole ricochet effect around the country because in the end, there's a lot of displacement happening. There's been, and then combined to this, the big weather, the bad weather, combined to that, the fears of congestion that's been since the spring. In the end, it's not that good, and the oversupply, obviously. So it's a classic case. Again, I want to be bashing France. It's not what I want to do, but it's not about the country. It's about the impact of such an event. So let's see. Hopefully, things go well for the Olympics. That's what's important. And if you're going there, enjoy. I would be just like a lot of French people. I would be away anyway. I would be on my home, which is not in metropolitan France. So yeah, I will be watching this on TV probably. Take care, everyone.